In the quiet shadows of a fading Midwest sunset, where the golden hues of orange and purple meet the grit of a dusty dirt road, begins a story of desperate sacrifice and chilling secrets. Sarah Thompson, a 20-year-old hardened by the weight of overdue bills and the haunting echo of her mother's illness, finds her world upended when a sleek black Cadillac arrives at her doorstep. Out steps William Carter, a man of immense wealth, silver hair, and a cold, dead serious proposal. A marriage of convenience in exchange for her family's survival. What starts as a heartbreaking bargain for financial security soon spirals into a high-stakes psychological thriller. Locked within the cold, marble walls of a secluded upstate New York mansion, Sarah discovers that she is not just a wife, but the latest piece in a creditor's dark collection. From hidden basement passageways to a bloodstained journal detailing the fates of those who came before her, Sarah must find the courage to outsmart a monster. This is more than a tale of survival. It is a journey through the darkness toward a new beginning, where the truth becomes a weapon and resilience paves the way to a love that is finally free. The sun was setting over the flat open expanse of the Midwest town, painting dusky in hues of orange and purple. The Thompson household sat at the end of Adet Road, its paint peeling and windows clouded with years of wear. Inside, Sarah Thompson, a slender 20-year-old with tired eyes and calloused hands, worked at the kitchen table, sorting through a pile of overdue bills her mother's cow jittered from the next room. A sound that had become a grim backdrop to their lives. "Sarah," her mother called weakly. "Can you bring me some water?" Sarah jumped up, filling a glass from the tap. Before hurrying to her mother's bedside, her mother, frail and pale, offered a weak smile. "You need to rest, Mom. I'll figure everything out," Sarah said softly. The weight of her words felt like a lithe sound of a car pulling up outside interrupted their quiet moment. Sarah glanced out the window and froze. A sleek black Cadillac rolled to a stop in front of their home. It was a stark contrast to the rusted pickup trucks that usually filled their neighborhood. "Who could that be?" her mother asked, her voice tinged with both curiosity and unease. Before Sarah could respond, the car door opened and out stepped William Carter, dressed in an impeccably tailored suit. His silver hair gleamed in the fading sunlight. His gait was slow but purposeful, exuding authority and confidence. Sarah stepped onto the porch, her brows furrowed as William approached. "Miss Thompson," William began, his deep voice calm yet commanding, "I've been made aware of your family situation." As Sarah blinked, confused. "Excuse me, who are you?" "My name is William Carter. I own several properties and businesses in this region," explained, gesturing toward the Cadillac. "I came here with a proposal." Sarah folded her arms. "What kind of proposal?" William's gaze didn't waver. "I want you to marry me." For a moment, Thord seemed to stand still. "Marry you?" Sarah repeated, her voice rising in disbelief. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," William replied, his tone steady. "You're a smart, capable young woman, and I have no doubt you'd make an excellent companion in return. I'll ensure your family's financial security. Your mother will receive the best medical care, and your brother's education will be fully funded. It's a fair deal." Sarah stared at him, searching for any sign of humor or deceit, but his expression was unreadably. "I need time to think about this, Shestamard." "Of course," William said with a slight nod. "Buten need your answer. Soon time is a loo neither of us can afford." Ash returned to his car and drove away. Sarah stood rooted on the porch, her mind racing. Later that night, as the house grew quiet, Sarah sat by the dim light of the kitchen lamp. Her mother's voice broke the silence. "Sarah," she called from the doorway, her frail frame leaning against the wooden frame for supper. "What did he want?" Sarah hesitated, then relayed the proposal. Her mother's eyes widened in shock. "That's absurd," she exclaimed, but her voice weakened into a bit of coughs. Sarah rushed to her side, helping her into a chair. "Mama, listen," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "If I do this, you'll get the care you need. Then you won't have to drop out of college. My Bothis is our only chance." Tears welled up in her mother's eyes. "I don't want you to sacrifice your life for us. You deserve to find someone you love to be happy." "I'm not happy now," Sarah said bitterly, wiping out her own tears. "At least this way I can help. Isn't that worth it?" Her mother didn't respond, her face etched with anguish. The following days were contemplation and whispered prayers. Sarah avoided eye contact with her neighbors, who had already begun gossiping about the young waitress and the rich old man. The decision weighed heavily on her, but as she heard her mother's coughing worsen and saw the stack of bills grow taller, she knew what had to do. The morning of the wedding dawned. Clear and cold, Sarah stood in front of a small mirror in a borrowed bridal gown, the lace scratching against their skin. Her hands trembled as she adjusted the veil. Her reflection staring back at her with wide, fearful eyes. In the quiet room, she whispered to herself, "I'm making the biggest mistake of my life." A knock on the door startled her. It was her younger brother, Danny, his suit too big for his lanky frame. Sarah, it's time, he said softly, his voice cracking with emotion. Sarah took a deep breath, forced a smile, and nodded. Let's go. She walked out of the room toward a future cloaked in uncertainty. Sprawling mansion stood atop a secluded hill in upstate New York, its stirring silhouette outlined against the gray sky. Sarah stepped out of the sleek black car, her small suitcase clutched tightly in her hand. The imposing structure loomed before her, its window stark and uninviting. Inside, the grand foyer was as cold and unwelcoming as the exterior. Polished marble floor stretched beneath high ceilings adorned with crystal chandeliers. Everything about the mansion screamed wealth, yet it felt devoid of warmth or life. Mary, the longtime housekeeper, greeted Sarah with a forced smile, a woman in her late 60s with a sharp gaze. She gestured for Serato. Follow her. This will be your room, Mrs. Carter, Mary said, opening the door to a modest bedroom on the second floor. Ita room was well up appointed but plain to the rest of the house. Thank you, Mary, Sarah said, forcing a smile, and please call me Sarah. Mary gave her a tight nod before turning to leave. Over her shoulder she added, if you need anything, the staff is here to help, but it's best not to ask too many questions. Sarah blinked, her smile faltering. What do you mean by that? Mary hesitated but didn't answer. Instead she stepped out and closed the door behind her, leaving Sarah alone over the next few days. Sarah tried to settle into her new life, but the mansion's vastness and eerie silence made it difficult. William, her husband, was either in his study or out of the house for hours at a time. The interactions were cordial but distant, as if their marriage were little more than a business arrangement. On evening, Sarah mustered the courage to join him at dinner. The long dining table felt absurdly empty, with just the two of them seated at opposite ends. Do you always eat alone? Sarah asked, her voice hurrying slightly in the cavernous room. Mostly, William replied without looking up from his plate. I have a lot of work to attend to. Sarah pressed on. And what kind of work keeps you out so late? William's fork paused midair. His eyes flicked up to meet hers. Cold and irritable business, he said curtly before returning to his meal. That night Sarah lay awake in her bed, staring at the ornate ceiling. As the hours passed, a soft creaking sound broke the silence. It started faintly like distant footsteps, then grew louder, as if someone were walking down the hallway. Outside her room she sat up, her heart racing. Sliding out of bed, she tiptoed to the door and opened it. Just a crack. The hallway was empty, bathed in dim moonlight. The sound had stopped. The following day, Sarah decided to explore the house. She wandered through room after room, each one grander than the last, but most very empty or locked in the west wing. She came across a door. Unlike the others, it was heavily reinforced with a brass handle and no visible keyhole. As she approached, a chill ran down her spine. She reached out to touch the handle, but Mary's voice startled her. I wouldn't do it if I were you, the housekeeper said from behind. Sarah turned quickly, her hand dropping to her side. Why is this door locked? It's the master's orders, Mary replied, her expression grave. Udibist, leave it alone. Sarah frowned. What's inside? That's not for you to know, Mary said firmly. Let it be. That evening, Sarah tried to push the strange encounter from her mind, but the sense of uneasing urge she couldn't shake. The feeling that the mansion held secrets William had no intention of sharing. Later that night she heard the low hum of our car engine outside her window. Peering out, she saw William stepping into our black sedan parked in the driveway. A tall man in a trench coat stood by their car, speaking with William in hushed tones. Unable to resist, Sarah grabbed her coat and slipped out of her room, keeping to the shadows. As she followed from the top of the grand staircase, she watched two men through the large front windows. Make sure she doesn't find out, William said, his voice sharp and commanding. Sirac breath Court was head talking about her. What was boo he hiding? Car pulled away into the night, leaving Sarah standing alone in the darkness, her mind racing with questions wasn't sure she wanted answered. The mansion was eerily silent as Sarah crept through the west wing. She had been watching the door for days, waiting for the perfect moment to investigate it. Net, for reasons she couldn't explain, was unlocked. Her heart pounded as she stepped inside, the faint creak of the door echoing in the dark corridor. The room was dimly lit by a single dusty chandelier. Clear shelves lined the walls, filled with old books, documents, and framed photographs. On a large mahogany desk in the center of the room, a stack of yellowed papers sat beside an ornate fountain pen. Sarah hesitated before approaching the desk, her eyes scanning the room for anything that might explain William's mysterious behavior. She picked up one of the photos. It showed William standing beside a young woman, smiling stiffly. The woman was beautiful, radiant even, and far younger than William. Sarah flipped the photo over. Written on the back in elegant handwriting were few words. William, Grace, 1998. Her hands trembled as she picked a Panatha photo, then another, each one adapted William with a different young woman, the dates on the back span decades. The names were all different, but pattern was clear beside the photos were legal. Documents, marriage certificates, prenuptial agreements, and death certificates. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The causes of death, varied accidents, illnesses, sudden disappearance, but they all ended the same way. What is this? She whispered to herself, her voice barely audible among the papers. She noticed a leather-bound journal. She flipped it open to find pages filled with William's handwriting. The entries detailed his relationships with these women, starting with how he'd charmed them and gained trust. The later entries turned a worker, describing how he'd isolated them, controlled them, and eventually discarded them. Sarah's stomach churned as she read a chilling sentence. They always think they can leave. They don't realize their mind until it's too late. A sudden noise outside the door made Sarah jump. She quickly slipped the journal into her bag and scanned the room for a place to hide, but before she could move, the door swung open, and there stood William. His face was a mask of cold fury. "What are you doing in here?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. Sarah clutched her bag tightly, trying to steady her voice. "I got lost. I didn't mean to intrude." William stepped inside, closing the door behind him. His eyes bore into hers, his expression unreadable. "This room is off limits," he said, his tone ice cold. "I'm mad at that. Very clear." Sarah swallowed hard. "I just wanted to understand why so many rooms are locked, why you never talk about your past." "You don't need to understand," William snapped. "You only need to follow the rules." Trembling, Sarah mustered the courage to confront him. "What happened to them, William? Your previous wives? Where are they? Why? I read there no record of them after they married you." William's jaw tightened. "If that's none of your concern, drop this for your own good." But Sarah refused to back down. "I deserve to know the truth. Am I just another one of your projects, someone you'll toss aside when you're done for a moment?" William's face softened as if he were about to explain, but then his cold mask returned. "You're me wife. Now that's all that matters. Didn't make me regret my generosity." His words sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. She realized she was in far deeper danger than she'd imagined. William wasn't just a controlling man with secrets, he was a predator. Fixed exhibition. Sarah nodded. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have pried." William studied her for a moment before stepping aside. "Good, no, get out of here and stay out." Sarah hurried past him, clutching her bag tightly. She could feel his eyes on her. She left the room, and her skin crawled with unease. Back in her bedroom, she locked the door and sat on the edge of the bed, pulling the journal from her bag. Her hands trembled as she flipped through it, the pages reading more of William's disturbing entries. The journal described not just the manipulation but also the elaborate lies and cover-up steps used to ensure no one suspected him of foul play. One phrase stood out, written in bold letters across an entire page: "They think they can escape, but they never do." Sarah's chest tightened. She knew she had to get out of the mansion, but William was always watching. Their staff seemed loyal to him, and the house was surrounded by high walls and security cameras. A knock on her door startled her, and she quickly hid the journal under her pillow. "Mrs. Carter," Mary's voice called softly. "Are you all right?" "Yes," Sarah replied, her voice shaking. "I'm fine." Mary lingered for a moment before walking away. Sarah waited until she was sure the house was quiet before pulling the journal out again. She began to formulate a plan, but her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps in the hallway. They stopped just outside her door. Sarah froze, holding her breath as the door rattled. "Sarah," William's voice called low and menacing. "Are you awake?" She didn't answer. The doorknob stopped moving, and after a long pause, the footsteps retraced. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. She realized the full extent of her situation. She was trapped in a house with a man who had every intention of making her his next victim, but she wasn't going to let that happen. Clutching the journal to her chest, she whispered to herself, "I will get out of here no matter what it takes." The atmosphere in the mansion grew colder with each passing day, and Sarah's unease deepened. She confided in Mary, the housekeeper, whose kindness and silent strength had become her only source of comfort. One afternoon, as Sarah dried dishes in the vast kitchen, she whispered, "Mary, something isn't right here. I found things in that locked room. I don't think you're safe." Mary paused, her expression grim. She glanced around the room to ensure if they were alone. "I've worked for Mr. Carter for over 20 years, she said quietly. "I've seen things. I can't explain things I wish I hadn't seen." Sarah leaned closer, her voice urgent. "Why stay? Why not live?" Mary shook her head. "You don't understand. He has ways of keeping people silent. I've seen staff disappear Vernet for asking too many questions. But you're different, Sarah. You're his wife. If anyone can get out, it's you." Sarah's heart raced. "Then help me, please." Mary hesitated before nodding. "I'll do what I can over the next few days." Sarah began meticulously observing William Shabbat. She noted when he left for high-slit night outings, and when the rotated. She memorized their guards' schedules and the layout of Thea's sprawling estate to maintain the illusion of compliance. She played thrall of the dutiful wife. At breakfast, smiled, politely serving William coffee. She complimented his suits and to listen attentively to histories about business deals. In Divery, interaction felt like a betrayal to herself, but she knew it was the only way to buy time. One evening while wandering the mansion under the guise of getting to know her new home, Sarah stumbled upon the basement door. It was slightly ajar. Curious but cautious, she slipped inside. The air was damp and the smell of mildew hung in the air. As descended the creaky stairs, the dim light from her phone revealed rosé-fold wine barrels and dusty storage crates. Her eyes landed on a peculiar section of the wall, a scene barely visible as though it concealed something. She pressed against the wall, and to her shock it swung open with a low groan revealing a dark passageway. That night Sarah lay awake, her thoughts racing. The discovery of the passageway felt like a lifeline, but she knew she couldn't act impulsively. She needed a solid plan, and above all she needed proof of William's crimes to protect herself once she escaped. Her resolve hardened when she heard William's late-night phonophone call. Standing just outside his study, she heard his deep voice through the crack in the door. Transfer everything before she gets suspicious. Hesed, his tone clipped in urgent. Time is running out. Sarah's blood ran cold. Wash talking about her. Was he planning to take everything she owned, or worse? The next morning Mary approached her in the garden. I have something to show you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. In Mary's room, hidden under a loose floorboard, were old letters and documents. They confirmed Sarah's suspicions. William had indeed been involved in the disappearances of his previous wives. They all tried to leave Mary, said, tears brimming in her eyes, and of them made it. With Mary's help, Sarah devised her escape plan. They agreed she would wait until William left for one of his late-night meetings. Mary would create a distraction for their guards, while Sarah used the secret passageway to flee the estate. I'll ever the journal with the police, Sarah said. The need to know the truth. Mary grasped Sarah's hand. Promise me you'll get out of here. Don't look back. Sarah nodded, her determination outweighing her fear. The night arrived. William kissed Sarah at dinner, his cold smile sending a shiver down her spine. Don't wait up for him, he said, his voice dripping with false affection. As soon as he left, Sarah and Marie sprang into action. Mary feigned an argument with a guard near the front gate, drawing his attention away from the security cameras. Clutching the journal in a small bag of essentials, Sarah slipped into the basement. She found the passageway and ducked inside, her heart pounding as the hidden door closed behind her. The tunnel was narrow and, with faint light filtering through cracks in the ceiling, each step felt like a gamble. The fear of being caught pressing against her like a weight. Suddenly a noise echoed from behind her footsteps, heavy and deliberate. Sarah froze, her breath hitching. She turned off her flashlight and pressed herself against the wall, straining to hear. The footsteps grew louder, and a familiar voice called out, Sarah, you can't run from me. It was William. Sarah's pulse thundered as she gripped the journal tightly. I have to keep moving, she whispered to herself, summoning every ounce of courage. She darted deeper into the tunnel, William's voice following her like a shadow. The estate was irresolute as Sarah prepared for her escape. She waited in her room, her bag packed with essentials and the damning journal tucked safely inside. Her heart pounded with each tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. When she heard William's car pull away, she sprang into action. Descending into the basement, Sarah moved quickly to the hidden passageway. The airways damp and the narrow tunnel seemed to stretch endlessly into the darkness. Her flashlight flickered, casting long, wavering shadows against the stone walls as she approached the exit. She heard faint voices echoing behind her. Panic surged through her. They know, she whispered to herself, tightening her grip on the journal. She quickened her pace. Her footsteps, muffled by the dirt-floored voices, grew louder, accompanied by the sound of heavy boots on stone. Finhar Williams's voice rang out cold and furious. Sarah's breath came in shallow gasps as she reached the exit, a rusted metal door that creaked loudly as she pushed it open. The sound echoed through the tunnel like a scream, spurring the man behind her to move faster. Emerging into the forest, she sprinted through the underbrush branches, scratching at her arms and face. The night was pitch blackened. The only light came from the faint glow of the moon behind her flashlight's bob. As William's men fanned out, their shouts growing closer. She can't have gone far, one yelled. Sarah's lungs beneath us. She pushed herself to keep running. She clutched the journal tightly, knowing it was her only weapon against William. Just as Sarah's strength began to when Ash spotted headlights through the trees. A car was approaching on a nearby road. She stumbled toward it, waving her arms frantically. Help, please stop. The car screeched to a halt, and the driver, a man in his early 30s with sharp eyes and a determined expression, jumped out. Are you Sarah? He asked, urgency in his voice. Yes, she gasped. How do you know me? I'm James Carter, an investigative journalist. I've been tracking William Carter for years. Get in, we don't have much time. With a hesitation, Sarah climbed into the car, clutching the journal to her chest. James floored the gas pedal as William's men burst out of the woods behind them. Ableck roared onto the road, giving chase. Hold on, James said, swerving to avoid a fallen branch. Sarah looked over her shoulder, fear gripping her as the Sve gained on them. They won't stop, she said. They'll do whatever it takes to bring me back. Not if we can get this to the authorities first, James replied, his voice steady. Suddenly, the sub pulled alongside them. The passenger went down. A man leaned out with a crowbar, aiming to smash their car side mirror. Get down, James shouted. Sarah ducked as the mirror shattered. James swerved sharply, forcing the SV to veer off the road and into a ditch. The force thinned as the car sped toward the city. Sarah's hands trembled as she opened their journal and flipped through its pages. This is everything, she said. Names, dates, Ivan. Details about how he silenced his previous wives. It's all here. James nodded, glancing at her with this and fine. I've gathered we can finally bring him down, but we have to act fast. Won't let this go easily. As they approached the outskirts of the city, Sarah's phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. You think you've won. This isn't over. Her blood ran cold. Showed the message to James. Woe tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Okay. Desperate, James said. That makes him dangerous, but don't worry, we have the truth on our side. Sarah nodded, determination flickering in her eyes. Stan, let's end this. The day William Carter was brought to justice was one Sarah would never forget. Standing beside James in the courthouse, she watched as the man who once held her life in his grip was sentenced. The courtroom Bazidas, the judge, listed William's crimes: coercion and suspected involvement in multiple disappearances. Sarah clutched the journal tightly, its damning evidence now an essential piece of focus. The weight of her journey settled over her, but for the first time in months she felt lighter. Justice had been served. The media erupted with news of William's arrest. Headlines labeled him a tycoon-turned-predator, exposing the layers of deceit and manipulation he had woven over decades. Victims' familiars came forward, thanking Sarah and James for their bravery in shining a light on the truth. As part of a court settlement, William's estate was liquidated to fund a compensation program for his victims and their families. Sarah, one of the primary claimants, received a portion of the settlement. For Sarah, the money was a lifeline. She used it to pay off her mother's medical debts and ensure her younger brother could complete his college education. The relief in their eyes was more valuable to her than any dollar amount. Back in her small hometown, Sarah found solace in rebuilding her life. With James's encouragement, she opened a community center focused on supporting women in crisis. She named it New Beginnings, a tribute to her own journey of survival and renewal. The center quickly became a haven for others. Shared her story openly, inspiring women to reclaim their lives and trust their instincts. Your past doesn't define you, Sarah would say. Your courage changed us. As Sarah dedicated herself to helping others, her bond with James deepened. What began as a partnership in justice evolved into a genuine connection. James admired Sarah's resilience and her ability to find light even in the darkest moments. Sarah, in turn, was drawn to his unwavering support and determination to right the wrongs they had uncovered over time. Their late-night planning sessions turned into dinners filled with laughter, shared dreams, and stolen glances. 1 year after their harrowing escape, James invited Sarah to a quiet park just outside her hometown, the same place where he had first picked her up that fateful night. As the sun set, James led Sarah to a small bench overlooking a serene lake. With a nervous smile, he pulled a simply yet elegant ring from his pocket. Sarah, he began, his voice steady but full of, you've shown me what real courage looks like. You've taught me that even the most broken paths can lead to something beautiful. Will you let me stand by your side forever? Tears welled in Sarah's eyes as she nodded, her voice steady. Yes, but no locked doors. In our house. They both laughed, the moment filled with relief and joy. Their wedding was a modest but heartfelt celebration held in Sarah's hometown. The community that had rallied behind her gathered towardness her new beginning. The ceremony took place in the garden of the community center, surrounded by blooming flowers and the women whose lives Sarah had touched. Sarah wore a simple white dress, her smile brighter than ever. As and James exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. In her speech, Sarah reflected on her journey. Sometimes life takes you through darkness to show you the value of light. I wouldn't be here today without the people who believed in me, and for that I am forever grateful. This isn't just the end of a chapter, it's the start of a whole new story. As they danced under strings of twinkling lights, James whispered, you didn't just survive, Sarah, you thrived, and I'm so proud to be part of your story. Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder, smiling, and I'm glad you were there. to help me write it. Thank you for joining us on Sarah's incredible journey, a tale of resilience, justice and the power of love to heal, even theative scars from a life of fear to own it, of purpose and joy. Sarah's story reminds us all that courage and determination can light the way through the darkest of times. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and share it with others who might find inspiration in Sarah's strength. And remember, this is just one of many heartfelt stories we're bringing to you. Subscribe to soul-stirring stories and turn on notifications so you never miss another tale that uplifts, inspires, and reminds you of the beauty of the human spirit. Until next time, take care, stay strong, and always believe in new beginnings. See you in the next story. As the moon rises over the quiet garden of new beginnings, we leave Sarah and James at the start of their most beautiful chapter yet. Sarah's journey from the dust-choked roads of the Midwest to the halls of justice reminds us that even when the doors are locked and the shadows grow tall, the human spirit cannot be easily caged. She turned her survival into a sanctuary, proving that our past may shape us, but it never defines us. Her story is a testament to the fact that courage is not the absence of fear, but the determination to keep walking until you find a light. Thank you for joining us for this gripping tale of resilience, justice, and the transformative power of a second chance. If Sarah's strength inspired you today, please give this story a like and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that new beginnings are always possible. Don't forget to subscribe to your emotional anchor and hit that notification bell so you can walk with us through every heart-pounding and heartwarming tale we share. Until we meet again, stay brave, keep your heart open, and always believe that the dawn is coming. See you in the next story.